Zoom itself that we're using right now has introduced around 3,000 to 4,000 side businesses in the US alone. You know, everything happens at Zoom these days. So you have on the ecosystem, similar to Amazon or anything else, you know, anything that has to do with online learning, work, church services, art shows, birthday parties. There are startups that are organizing, you know, Zoom dating. Zoom dating is here to stay, by the way, because of safety and other things. It's an alternative to other dating. Zoom concerts. You know, they even have startups on cannabis hangouts, wherever it's legal in the US. So it's, you know, you have an explosion of usage immediately creating side services. Of course, this is on the back. I'm not presenting a rosy picture. I want you to think that this is on the back of a lot of pain in the economy. This has to be considered. You know, the economies are going to be under duress this year and next, under tremendous duress under these years and next. And if you have a second wave coming, you know, there are going to be some very hard choices in terms of policy making from politicians, because I'm not sure if they can easily, you know, enforce very strict repeat lockdowns without having to start, you know, planning for food deliveries. So on the other hand, yeah, there is a very interesting landscape, and I would just like to close with a couple of things on the CE investment landscape. So a few notes on investing in the Central and Eastern European region. A few things. First of all, funds are still here. There is still tremendous amount of dollars that need to be deployed, and they were not deployed. So basically the funds are still here. They have raised money. They need to deploy that money. It's not that they're going to return it to their investors. It's not that they're going to keep it in the bank with, you know, zero interest. They have to deploy. So the liquidity is there. It's just that everything is frozen. People are unwilling to make decisions. They are postponing. They say, let's see it again in 3 months. There is a lot of unclear outlook. Now, whoever sectors or businesses have evident alignment with changes that are coming out of COVID, obviously are hotcakes. They're even raising their valuations. So, and that makes sense. So there are some of them who are really, really lucky. There are some that they are doing, you know, no touch tech. The ones that they're working, you know, distributed software, cybersecurity. I have some, you know, cybersecurity for working from home. You know, there's some ones who happen to be in the right time at the right place. Now, valuations, and I have underlined that, valuations have experienced a sort of an anomaly for 3 years because of fear of missing out. They have become crazy. A lot of people have missed out on clear paths to profitability. So valuations are back to focusing on future bottom lines rather than fear of missing out. It doesn't matter if you're in a hot sector, you need to have a business plan that shows that you're going to make money and you're going to make serious money eventually. So P&L rules, you know, common sense is back among a lot of investors. You know, I want to see if I'm going to put, I don't know, 50,000, 500,000, 5 million, you know, show me the path of, you know, why is this going to make a substantial return? And it was surprising, borderline shocking that, you know, we have been seeing several startups that they were simply having no answer to that in the past few years. They're saying, you know, it's just a great sector to be in, and that's it. And, we have actually reduced our investment in 2018 and 19 simply because it was so difficult to find, you know, realistic business plans. Now, for the entrepreneurs who are going to stick around, that demonstrates grit, and they're also going to be exploring exploiting some supply side, because as I said, the dollars are still there. So if there are less entrepreneurs going after these dollars, there's going to be a benefit to them, and they're also going to be able to demonstrate grit. I don't know if you know the word. It's like really determination. That's something that investors really appreciate. This is pretty much about the investment landscape. I'm going to take more questions on Q&A. I want to emphasize the importance on cash conservation, exactly because of the frozen nature of things. Cash is king. Make sure you are very careful with your cash flow and your unit economics. You need to bootstrap if needed. I have one comment here that I would like to emphasize, something that is emanating strong from US, Silicon Valley, and also a lot of Western world. Basically, these days, in startups or in high growth tech startups, which is a subset of all startups, because you may have a startup, I don't know, in food or something else. But in tech startups, there are only 2 types of jobs in the near future and generally the future. You're either going to code or you're going to sell. You don't see a lot of hierarchical companies. There are 2 types of people. You're coding or you're selling. That's pretty much, these are the jobs that I see as happening in the future. And a reminder, and I'm going to close because I was planning to go only for 10 minutes. A reminder, timeless, Darwin, the key word is this, as always. So keep it in mind as you are thinking of, if you have an existing business and the revenues are challenged, both on the revenue side and on the cost side, unfortunately, you may need to adapt. If you're an early stage startup, you might be refining, adapting, or pivoting entirely a part of your business plan. And that's pretty much it. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'll have a good 15-20 minutes for Q&A if you guys want.
Yeah, thank you, Andreas, for this. You asked me what are some of the industries that our participants are coming from. I know for sure that there are quite a few companies from IT, from tech, so they relate very well to the things that you just presented. So are there any questions of that type or any other questions? Please shoot. Well, I'm gonna break the ice if people are still pondering, and also if you are thinking of a question, you can drop it in the chat section as well. So Andreas, for companies in tech, right? So we understand what's going to happen with Horeca and events and so forth. So like you explained, all those tech companies that are focused on web service, right? They're on a launching pad right now. What do you recommend in terms of trial and error really fast on the MVP or a new product? What would be a good way to try various things and prototype very fast this period?
Well, first of all, because there's often a misunderstanding in Romania that when you mean with tech, there are way too many tech companies in Romania which are selling their skills and time rather than a product or a service. So if you're talking about, and there's an often misunderstanding, that this kind of companies are professional service, they are not tech companies. So if you're selling your time as a developer, or you have 10 developers and you're a subcontractor of Western firms because of skills, price, quality, you're in the technology sector, but in reality, and I want to emphasize that because that's all too common in Romania, you're a professional services firm. As a company, you may have a nice margin, you may grow a little bit, but you are not you're not a high growth company. You don't have a product or service to anchor specifically. I mean, you're selling time primarily. It's not a niche product, you're selling talent. If you're talking about tech companies which have a specific product or service, yeah, of course, you're talking about, tech startups. Now in them, as always, again, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. It has become clear and has been repeated in a lot of trainings and accelerators that if you have a product or service, you need to go out to your market as soon as possible. The best feedback, you're going to get it from the market. And the best feedback, you're going to get it from your first customers. You have absolutely no brand to lose. You have no name to tarnish. The only thing you want is to get feedback as soon as possible. So whatever product or service you have, so long as mildly decent, especially if it's free, you need to get it out and get product, customer feedback as soon as possible, even among friends and family or first users. And then you are going to adjust the product or the service in any way you can. So that has become pretty evident, if that was your question.
Yes. Thank you. That is helpful. One more question regarding the events industry.
Yeah.
Okay, so offline events are dead, and
they are not dead. They are not dead. You just don't know when and under what conditions they're going to start. What's the shape of them? So sorry to interrupt. They're not dead. There's a lot of startups, especially on no-touch tech, that they are looking at events. How you minimize, human interaction in events. The difficulties in bars and clubs. So that's a different thing. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's a good comment. So obviously, I was just wondering to see what you see startups. How do startups cope with this problem, obvious problem, and where do you see the business conferences, venues, and events shifting towards?
part of the dollar spent or the dollar market on events is going to go online. That's an irreversible trend. I don't know if it's going to be 20% or 50%, even post-COVID. And the reason are not going to be primarily health, are going to be primarily economics. So people have been forcibly thrown into what we're doing right now, and they're saying that online events, unless, you know, they are different kinds of online events, high impact, low impact, high importance, low importance. So they have seen that several of them can happen online a lot cheaper, a lot more convenient, without the travel cost, even beyond, forget the medical aspect. It saves money to companies. So a lot of the online element of that is here to stay. So the Zooms and other apps are going to capture part of that market. For the market that's going to remain offline, there are a lot of apps that they're going to optimize it in terms of efficiency and in terms of interaction within the event, and also safety from a medical point of view, given the concerns that are going to linger for quite a few years. That's why you have the no touch tech element there. So it is, so if you look, the overall industry is going to shrink in terms of dollars, because the online will produce less spend on conference because they're a lot lower cost. And the offline element that's going to remain, which is going to be still substantial, is going to change, and it's going to introduce opportunities to startups in order to make it more efficient, more healthy, and also lower cost.
Right. So obviously the number of participants will become a factor, and you will have to, you know, tailor any offline event in the future on the smaller number of people that can be in the same room with distancing and all the things that are required right now, right?
Yeah. The offline will remain. It's just going to be less so, and it's only going to be the more important, more critical. Like if you're doing this business meeting right now, some of them you're going to do offline, but some of them are going to stick to online because it's cheaper. The people do not have to commute from their office or work, and it's more convenient, and you're going to reach a larger audience. Some of them are going to go offline, but they're going to be, you know, more high impact, where maybe a nature of a presenter or an interaction or a discussion is more necessary. Maybe bigger events where you will need to interact with more people, but then you're going to have a lot more tech solutions, both on the health side and the efficiency side and the cost saving side.
Okay, Andreas, we have a question from one of the participants. Do you think that the markets hit bottom already?
Nowhere near. No, the impact, unfortunately, was just at the start of it. So people, you know, there was a shock in March, but to a large extent, this has been sustained to some degree by money from governments. There's a huge stimulus that came along, and at the same time, people initially could tap into their savings, you know, in terms of cash flows. We're not gonna. I don't think we have hit bottom. So from an economy point of view, it's gonna get worse in the short term. So companies will have to make decisions. A lot of companies have postponed decisions. Some of them may have to make some harsh decisions in terms of, you know, cutting people. And many of them did that immediately because they had to, because there were restaurants or bars or whatever. Some of them, you know, want to see what's the effect on the demand on their product and service. So, you know, it can be on any business, you know, even the business that I'm in right now, you know, look at the university. We don't know how many students we're going to have in the fall. I'm just using an example. If you look at our portfolio companies, some of them have doubled their income, or, you know, they increased 30% in 3 months because of the nature of their business. That's very much aligned to, you know, delivery at home and COVID. Some of them who had businesses which are, you know, $1 million to $2 million business that generate a lot of cash, so that you could consider them as stable, and they had a 20 or 30% decline in revenues, you know, within a month or two. So if this is sustained, then you will have to make some hard decisions on the cost side as well. So I don't think we have hit bottom. I'm not as pessimistic though in terms of the lasting effects. It all depends on how the pandemic goes. You may have a reasonable recovery. It is going to be slow. It's not a matter of just reopening the economy, because people are scared, and they're scared for not only because of health reasons. They are scared because they have uncertainty in the economy. So that compromises spending. The moment you compromise consumer spending, you do spread the pain in the economy. So I don't think we have hit bottom yet, unfortunately. It's
I see. Okay. Andreas, so in terms of the entrepreneurs in Bucharest and the companies that you invest in so far, in terms of best practices, is there some good best practices to adopt in this period of time? What are some things to avoid?
Yeah, well, a few things that were in the presentation, a few things I mentioned in the opening. First of all, you need to be very careful with your cash flow. There is, cash flow is king. There is something that I mentioned in class, and it's written. I don't know if any of you have been through an accelerator. There is an expression. It's called SFIMITIM. It's an acronym meaning cash flow is more important than your mother. It sounds like a joke. It reminds people that, especially in times of crisis, if you run out of cash, especially if you're a small business, you don't have anywhere to fall back. You're not going to get a loan from the bank. You don't have people to come in and salvage you, and the government is not going to, you're not going to be easily salvaged by many government programs. You're not a large company to, just knock on a minister's door and says, hello, we have 20,000 jobs, we're in trouble. So cash flow is very, very important from a practical point of view. Bootstrapping cash flow, and on the other side, be very aggressive on your customers. Every single dollar that you can get, you may want to give discounts to get, a year's worth of customers, subscription or whatever, I don't know what your business is. So cash flow is very important, even if it compromises your profitability in the short term. So if through price discounts, you're going to compromise your bottom line in terms of P&L for the year, cash flow is very important. And the other hand, grit is also very important, and ability to adapt. Look, are there any side opportunities that I can grab? The same way that companies that they were doing clothes have switched on to making, masks using clothes, grabbing the opportunity, see what can I do? The same way that a lot of companies were forced into delivering at home, your food at home or whatever, what can I do that rhymes along the needs of people right now? Because it's going to stay for a little while.
Okay, Andreas, one more question. What is the difference between risk and uncertainty?
Yeah, I read the panel.
Oh, okay.
So going back to linguistics, uncertainty is you have a grand absence of understanding which way things are going to go on a macro level. Risk is much more refined. It's like macro and micro. Risk is much more refined in the sense that that the industry is a growing industry. You're going to have a lot of competitors, but you have a lot of risks involved in terms of how you're going to execute, how good your team is, how good your product is, how good your pricing is, how people are going to react to that specific product that you're going to put into the market. Uncertainty is a little bit of greater. It's a little bit of, you don't know if this industry is going to exist or if it's going to pivot entirely to different kind of products. So uncertainty is compounding the inevitable risk that is present in every venture you're going to take into your life. Even if you open up a restaurant, you go into, I don't know, you go in health, forget COVID, you go to Mamaya, you open a restaurant. You don't know if it's going to be better than others. Is the competitive product, it's Indian food. Do people like Indian food? Do they like the price? But you do know that Mamaya is there. You do know that, 1 million people who go on holidays, the average spend, how many go to host. There's not much uncertainty, but there's a lot of risk to your business. Whereas uncertainty is a grander thing. Uncertainty is you don't know if COVID, if Mamaya will open this year. So I don't know if I framed it a little bit.
Yeah, it helps. All right, Andreas, thank you very much. Any other last minute questions from our participants? Floor is yours. We have Andreas for a few more minutes here if you want to pop in some other questions.
I see a question about programming classes. My surname is Greek. Actually, I have a UK passport and I have hardly lived in Greece. I love it. I go there on holidays and I have family there, but that's about it. So I don't know what kind of programming classes are taught there in public schools. I suppose a few, but programming is, even MBAs, the MBA of INSEAD has introduced Python programming because it said, if you're going to work in a tech business, you at least need to know how Python programming works a little bit, even if you're not going to touch it again. So programming is big. Going back to it, regardless of what's happening right now, if you're a good programmer, you're not going to run out of work. There are still 2 million programmers that they are desperately sought after in the European Union right now. And in startups, you're either going to code or you're going to sell. So there's not a lot more in between.
But the question is from me. How about the UK? Are there any programming curriculum taught in public schools or private schools from the government, let's say like a national program, or it's done also by private?
Yes, they are private. And first of all, they're also free private. If you look at some of very successful entrepreneurs in the West, one of the things they did is they opened up private free programming schools. So if you look at the guy Didier in France, the one that had Iliad, and a big telecom startup guy, a repeat entrepreneur, has 500 has a free programming school. It's becoming fashionable, but of course the majority are either in universities or in a lot of shorter programming courses. So you can buy with 2,000 or 3,000 euro like a 2-month or a 3-month programming bootcamp. And many of them, I mean, if you're thinking, I mean, especially you being a female, there's a lot of support for female programming. There's a lot of programs that you can Google and see that they're, free programming schools for women. There's a big push in it because they have recognized and they see that there is an imbalance in coders between, men and women. So they try to support more women in coding. There are a lot of resources. Some of them are free, not so many, but some. Some of them are for pay, but the most important, most of them are not 3-year bachelor programs. They are 3-month camps, and they can be very useful. A lot of people are retooling their career towards coding.
I was a
I'm not
programmer.
talking about you, it's answering your question.
Yeah. I have a school and I'm trying to do this for kids and teens because they have to start early. So my question is coming from that direction.
Is it an NGO?
It's not an NGO, but in order to offer free programming classes, I will need to find partners so I can offer this for free. I'm not in this position right now. We are a small school and people are paying.
What age group? If it's early age group, then usually that's government initiatives. The Israeli government has introduced programming as a pilot in many schools in grade 1 to 6, but that's a government initiative. So there's government money involved. Private donors, they're mostly interested not in kids and earlier, but on later stage, because then they can benefit from the fact that they create a talent pool that eventually can affect their own businesses. So they're mostly interested in people reskilling or maybe students who are on the higher grades, close to graduation, and instead of going to university, maybe they would like to start immediately with coding. That attracts the attention of the private companies more, but there is a lot of CSR programs that might be interested. It's just with what's going on right now, it's difficult to generate noise because right now a lot of people are firefighting.
I know, yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, I have, I will continue to do research to see what's happening. But the best, for example, the best programming schools, there is something called ID Tech from US. They are all paid and they are paid like big money. It's not cheap. I offer here, it's lower cost because Romania, it's not a country where people can afford too much. But if you go online, you can do whatever.
Yeah, again, what is the age group?
The age group, I have different groups. So 8 to 12 years old, 13 to 16, and then 17, 18. Terminal classes.
Okay, for the early ones, the only source of funding is either government or CSR from companies or parents.
Yeah.
These are the only 3 sources. For the later stage, it can also be private companies. So depending on the age group.
Yeah, I will keep asking them to pay and then maybe mix it up with some free classes because they are willing to pay. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Andreas. This would kind of conclude our session together. We invite you to Yash after the traveling restrictions are lifted.
Well, there's a good tech scene I'm hearing, so yes.
Yeah, you're hearing good things about Yash. Yes, Yash
especially
is,
the tech scene. Beyond Cluj, they also say Yashi has a good foarte bun programmers.
Yes. And the difference between Iași and Cluj is that Iași has more time span to grow. The Cluj is kind of jammed at the moment.
True. Okay.
All right, Andreas. Thanks again.
Guys. Have a good rest of the day.
Yes.
Stay strong and keep an eye on your cash flow.
Will do.
Okay.
Try to follow what's most important, and who knows, maybe do something in collaboration with the MSM in the future as well.
Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn. Take care. Cheers.
Will do.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Andreas.